What's up, guys? Today we're going over how to be the best soccer player in your team. I'm going to give you some ideas, some tips, and some techniques and training that you can do to start standing out on your team. Hey, what's up, guys? It's Dave here from SimplySoccer, where we're helping you to improve your game and stand out on the pitch. We release videos every single week designed to help you do just that. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and you hit that bell icon so you don't miss any new videos from us. So today we're going to be going over how you can start becoming one of the more valuable players on your team and, get you on a path to where you're becoming the best player on your team. So I'm going to go through this first one pretty quickly because I know you know this one. I just have to mention it because it's true, and it's work hard. If you want to be one of the best players on your team or the best player on your team, guess what? The lazy player is not going to be the one that actually becomes that. It's going to be the player that works hard consistently and puts in the extra effort needed to start becoming a better player. You cannot expect to put in the bare minimum and become a standout player in your team. You need to be that player who's doing everything they can when they can to become the best player. They're working on their game, they're doing what they can, they're learning new things, all of this stuff, and we'll go over some of this stuff a little later in this video, but make sure you're working really, really hard. Don't leave any stone unturned. Don't be that player who thinks that, they don't need to work hard because they're already at a certain level, because if you do that, you're going to, without realizing it, a player is going to come up who's working harder than you. They're going to come up and take your place or end up being a lot better than you. So if you want to be one of the best in your team, first and foremost, make sure you're working hard at your game. This is, again, an obvious one, but it needs to be mentioned. So number two, kind of going along those same lines, is make sure you are practicing individually. You cannot expect to be the best player on your team if you are just going to your team training and then not practicing that much, after the fact. You want to be practicing almost every single day in some capacity if you can, and you really want to organize and discipline yourself to the point where you have committed individual training sessions where you're working on your fitness, you're eating right, you're doing all these things to make yourself grow as a player. Progress and growth is no accident. It comes to the players who do discipline themselves, who are working out individually and training individually. And you could be one of the best players in your team right now, but if you're not working individually on your game, there's going to be a player who will be, who again is going to rise above you eventually if they keep putting in that work consistently. And that's the big word as well. You need to be making sure that you're working on your game individually on a consistent basis, and you need to make sure you're doing the right kind of training, so deliberate practice. But that all comes from figuring out what you need to do, doing your research, experimenting, but make sure you're doing individual practice, because if you're just relying on your team sessions to help you get better, you're missing out on so much opportunity to grow as a player, and you could be doing that if you were training individually. Okay, so number three is rise to occasions. If you want to be the best player on your team, you have to be that player who can come up trumps in the clutch moments, who can come up and help or save their team. You look at the best players in the world, for example, you can name as many as you want. The best players on their team are usually the players that get them out of trouble, that usually win games for them, that come up on the big occasions. They're the players that when someone needs to stand up and be counted, they stand up and are always counted for the most part. You cannot be the most important player in your team if you're shying away from those bigger games or big occasions, or you're buckling under that pressure. Now, this comes with time, and you need to develop the mental side, which is something we're going to go over in a second. But if you want to be one of those standout players or best player on your team, you need to be someone who gets used to being someone who can rise to that big occasion, who can perform in those pressure moments, who can come up clutch when your team needs a goal, or they need someone to stand up and be a leader, or they need someone to stand up and be counted. So if you want to be one of the best in your team, make sure you're training yourself in a way that's going to help you handle those kinds of situations. And like I alluded to, number four is work on the mental side. The mental side of the game is so important. If you don't get the mental side under control, it's going to be really hard to develop as much as you can on the physical side. If you don't have the confidence, if you don't have the belief to come up in those clutch moments like we just talked about, if you don't have the belief that you can get better, if you don't have that mental toughness to be able to perform in pressure situations or to be able to push through when things get difficult, it's going to be really hard for you to be the best player on your team and on a good team as well. You need to really work on your mental side, and how you do that that is you actually set time aside to do that. It's like any other thing, it's a learned skill. We already had a video that went over how self-confidence and self-belief is actually a learned skill. Well, it absolutely is. So make sure you're devoting time to work on the mental side of your game. You can do things like visualization, you can do other practices, you can be monitoring your thoughts, whatever you need to do your research, do the practices, and work on the mental side of your game almost as much as the physical side of your game, because it's going to come in handy when you're trying to perform in those pressure situations, when you're trying to rise up and be counted. And the player who has the most mental toughness or confidence is usually one of the standout players on the team. Now, number 5 is be willing to do what others are not willing to do. Now, this kind of ties into working hard in individual training, but if you want to be one of those players who's different, who stands out, who helps your team win games, who at the end of the season everyone looks back and goes, you made a huge contribution to the team, you were the MVP or whatever it is. If you want that to happen, you need to be willing to do what others are not. That means, again, for hard work, you need to be willing to put in the hours. You need to be willing to do the research to find out what you need to be doing, because sometimes it's no good to put in hours upon hours of doing something that gives you tiny results when you could be doing something else that putting in the same amount of time will give you much more results. And that's where working hard and smart comes in. If you want to work hard and smart, you not only put in the hours, you figure out what it is you actually need to be doing that's going to help you get the results you need to get quicker. Now, I'm not saying you're going to get results overnight. I'm not saying that you're going to become the best player on your team within a week or two, but you should still make it as easy on yourself as possible by figuring out what are the best practices that you need to be doing. So be willing to do the things that other players are not willing to do. And usually that just means being disciplined. That usually means eating correctly. That usually means, making sure you're stretching. That usually means putting in the work, the workouts, the individual training. If you're doing that and other players are not, guess what? You're going to eventually rise above them. You're eventually going to distance yourself from them as far as skill level goes. So keep doing that on a consistent basis and you will start becoming one of the standout players on your team. Again, this takes time, but if you put in that effort and you're willing to do what other players are not willing to do, you will start moving ahead of them. Okay, and number 6, again, ties into a few of the others, but is always be challenging yourself and always be learning. And I alluded to this a little bit earlier, but if you want to be a player that is one of the best in the team, you have to be that guy who's constantly learning new ways to do things. You're reinforcing the ways that work, and you need to be challenging yourself. If you are just going through the motions or doing the same individual practices over and over again without putting in that added challenge, you're going to plateau. And if you plateau, and again, these other players are working on their game individually, are, making sure they're doing the right things, or challenging themselves, they will go above you eventually. So make sure that you're also challenging yourself. If your training is getting too easy, that means you've hit a certain homeostasis and you need to move beyond that. If your fitness is getting too easy, it means you need to make it more intense and more challenging. If you're doing drills and you're able to do it 100% perfectly each and every time, it means that there needs to be an added challenge. An example I like using is if you're doing cone drills and you're able to weave through them at speed and without knocking over a single cone or hitting a single cone, it probably means you either need to go faster, move the cones closer together, or do something else that's going to add another element to it or another challenge so that it's more difficult for you to do it. But if it's more difficult, you're able to rise up to that challenge and get better. So always be learning, through watching videos, through reading books, through doing things that are going to help you to become a better player. There are certain books you can read. I have a book like the book Peak and Relentless would definitely be books that help you. The book Spark has been one that's shown me some ideas that have helped my fitness, for example. Always be learning and finding new ways that you can improve your game and improve yourself so that you can get to that next level. And then when you start learning what these new ways are and you start learning these new things, you can incorporate them into your training for that added challenge and continue challenging yourself so you get better and better as well. All right, guys, so those are 6 ideas that are going to help you become one of the best players on your team or the best player on your team. Now, none of these things are glamorous. If you were expecting like skills or tricks or things like that in order to become one of the best, that's not what makes someone the best. You can work on your skill moves, you can work on your, your other areas, and I encourage you to do that because if you're working hard, you will be doing that. But these are the things to keep in mind. I really feel that the best players on teams are usually the players that really have the mental side under control. They're disciplined, they're consistent with their training, they're doing things other players are not doing. They're truly the players that start, moving themselves away from the crowd and start rising to a higher level. So if you really want to start becoming that standout player, if you want to be that player that moves up teams or just becomes the best in the team they are on now currently, then be putting in the work. Be doing the things that you need to do in order to make that happen. All right, guys, so question of the day is let me know in the comments which one of these things do you need to work on the most. So do you need to work a little harder? Do you need to make sure you're challenging yourself a little more? Let me know in the comments. And you know what? Let's keep it on a positive note as well. Let me know which one of these things are you doing really well right now as well. So let me know which one you need to work on the most and why. But also let me know which one you're doing very well at the moment. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching this. It was just a quick video on how to become one of the best on your team or the best player on your team. Make sure you take a lot of these ideas to heart and you start incorporating them into your training. Please make sure you like and share this video as well, and you subscribe if you're new to Simply Soccer. And as always, I'll have 2 videos come across the screen so you can continue to learn and continue to grow as a player. Once again, thank you so much for watching this video. We will have a live stream out tomorrow. Check Instagram for the post that will have more details about that. And I will see you tomorrow in the live stream or on the next video.